Y'all need dads.
I have the utmost respect and admiration for our president. He has, I don't know if he even knows this, but he's given so many people hope that there's a chance to beat the bad guys.
When moments like this happen, when people who don't neatly fit into political categories begin gravitating towards strongman figures, it usually tells us less about ideology and political perspective and more about what I feel is what's missing in culture. What I want to explore today is this simple concept. Why in times of inconclusion and instability does society reach for symbols of strength, even deeply flawed ones, most times deeply flawed ones? And moreover, what does this reveal about masculinity, male absence, and what I believe is our collective longing for direction? And before anybody rushes to conclusions, let me be very explicitly clear. This video is not some nostalgia or hearkening back to this idealized past. And this is not even a call to revive versions of masculinity that have been historically harmful to women, families, and communities at large. This is not that. However, this is a cultural and psychological analysis. I believe Nicki is symbolic. I truly don't believe she loves Trump. I believe she, like so many of his cult followers, longs and loves the daddy that they never had. Ever since we saw this sad display on our screens, child.
My dad and my mom separated, so I didn't have a lot of male energy in my home. And also, I'm married to a family that, not a lot of male energy going on. It's beautiful though, but there's times where, it's something about, I love Hillary, I love everyone, right? But the campaign, I'm with her, just didn't make me feel as a guy that didn't get to see my dad all the time, like a guy that could play catch with his son. There was something about when I put this hat on, it made me feel like Superman.
That's when I knew. But I've always said it in passing, but today I thought it's time we put some language to this and eventually, hopefully, call some folks in. That's what I hope to do in this video anyway. Y'all need dads. And I know that there are plenty of Trump supporters who have active dads, but hear me out here. That nuclear family picture that so many folks, especially on the right, have in their heads of this picture-perfect 1950s family where dad was this traditionally masculine man who played football with the kiddos and then kissed mom on her forehead and went to work from 9 to 5, came back home, kissed mom while she cooked dinner, laid down the law, kept order and peace in the home. Yeah, that thing, so many of y'all either had that in theory or didn't even have that at all. Many people grew up without fathers. Others grew up with men who were present but emotionally unavailable. And many others just encountered men who wielded power without responsibility. We'll get to more of that later, but ultimately right now what I'm trying to drive home is that this has left a vacuum. And when there is a vacuum, especially around structure and protection, societies don't simply become freer, they become more anxious. Now, this isn't about blaming men. It's about acknowledging that many men were never formed, never initiated into responsibility, never shown how to hold strength while also having humility. When grounded masculinity presence is missing, people don't stop longing for it. They just start looking for it in distorted places. Nicki Minaj isn't a political philosopher. And I want to be clear. I recognize that she has a myriad of other issues that can lead to her making such a fool of herself on stage in the ways that she did. And also I want to leave room for that to have been done completely autonomously because she believes in that choice. I'll leave space for that. I don't believe this is the case, not fully anyway, but I most certainly leave space for it again. But honestly, that doesn't need to be true in order for this to be a factor in hers and so many like hers support for this man. Moreover, there are racial and cultural factors at play that also contribute to the rise of this man that political minds far greater than I have went into great detail about. But again, this theory does nothing to take away from the other truths about why he happened. If anything, they only add more credence to the many cases that have already been made. One of the defining realities of modern society is not just the absence of men physically, but the absence of formed masculinity. For many, if dad was present at all, Too often, he was the strong man caricature who wielded power through strength and domination and cosplayed a fragile, unrealistic version of masculinity that he was sadly forced into via abuse and emotional neglect from his own traumatic childhood in many cases.
My mama couldn't stand him, couldn't stand that evilness. She run off when I was about 8. She sneaked off one night, told me she was coming back for me. I ain't never seen her no more.
Or you have those whose dad was around, perhaps even present, like he was there, but he wasn't kind of there too, right? Those whose dad came home but didn't really speak or laugh or play or talk or engage really at all. And then there are those whose dad was around but was entirely too passive. And rather than participating in the home as an active partner and team player helping to steer the ship healthily, he simply passively disengaged in various ways. So yeah, so many of y'all had a dad, me too actually, but to what degree did y'all have him, right? Or on the flip side, you have your folks like Nicki, whose father was violently abusive and struggled with addiction throughout her youth and young adulthood, with her at times even stating she'd wish he was dead before in order to protect her family.
This house was the house that my father burned down. Me and my brother, we were at a neighbor's house spending the night that night. They came and said, your house is burning down. I just remember running, racing down, and I remember when I got here, I just saw a big commotion, and I was so scared I didn't know what happened, but everybody was running over here, and I just looked. My house was gone. The house was gone. All of my toys, all my clothes, all of my memories.
Her first experience with a man, the one responsible for her literal life no less, was a false strong man archetype. But he wasn't strong in her favor. His strength wasn't used to protect her, but it was something she needed to protect herself and her family from. Or take...
Standing in that spot, I love this guy right here. Let me give this guy a hug right here. I love this guy right here.
Yeah, him. My point is, some of this obsession about this man is in large part due to our cultural obsession with the strong man figure, either because we didn't have one in our immediate lives, or we did, and our understanding of what a healthy man looks like is skewed. And honestly, I can't even say that I don't get it. Well, wait. Let me back it up. Let me hold on. I'll never understand people who triple trumped, honestly. Or maybe I just don't want to. Either way, yeah, no, I ain't saying that. But I do get people's hunger for strength and masculinity, because this version of it that we've been sold via media, war stories, and depictions of old yesteryear is an idyllic one that is captivating and one that has the power to make you feel seen and have assurance in his ability to protect and provide for you unconditionally. It's a vision that mirrors nobility, honor, and valor. But the sad truth is, it's not even real, or at least it's not reflective of the truth of what it is to be male in its entirety. The way we've been told masculinity should look is this: without flaw and superhuman, when in reality, it looks more like this. I got you. You thought I was going to present some broke down picture of a horrible person or version of a person, didn't you, right? Not at all, actually. I presented a varied image because that's what masculinity should be given the freedom to be. Varied, complex, room to display honor and courage, and room to be vulnerable and weak like every other human being on the planet. Yes, men are traditionally more physically strong than women, and their countenance is different from that of a woman traditionally. And that has significant value to the collective human experience without question. The amount of testosterone and the physical makeup of a biological male is important, as it has the capacity for power and influence. But without healthy guardrails and a balanced understanding of culture and history and the value of human life and empathy, that inclination toward competition and egotistical tendencies will always overtake men and leave us with the exact fractured caricature of manhood we have historically struggled with. And I mean all of us, men too. One where we want dad's heart, but all he has to give us is his hand. Be it a hand of provision, or too often worse, a hand of abuse.
I'm glad Trump's here at the moment. You know, it's like daddy arrived and he's taking his belt off.
Trump rose to prominence because our collective societal vision of manhood is screwed up.
But it's another group of young men the former president is trying to impress.
You can't vote for Kamala and be a real man.
We want a strong man because our image of strong manhood is just not real. But what's wild is that I know most people saw that though. Like, they clearly know that this man is not valored or decorated or noble in any way. But I think what happened is because our experiences with manhood and masculinity have all privately fallen short of the divine-like image that we've been sold in our minds, so many people accept this as the image of what it looks like. Yeah, he cheats and lies and is a fraud in every way, but he's unapologetic and holds no punches, and he tells it like it is and doesn't give a about anybody. But what does that say about us, y'all? And y'all can say all day long that this is a white man's problem because they propped him up in this way. And yeah, I'd be inclined to believe you. I really would, except every race has done this same thing in various ways with their problematic men. Because the truth is that image of manhood was broken in our minds at some point in all of our lives because it's not real. Men are humans. And as much as they deserve grace, empathy, and vulnerability, they also deserve to be held accountable and not graded on a curve because they are male. There are no special accommodations for him because he's male. We offer grace and accountability because humans struggle and thus deserve it. But we don't simply accept bad behaviors from them because they're male. We all watched as our culture, one by one, called powerful men to account for what felt like the first time in history. And it felt like collectively our culture began to reckon with some of the ways we've been propping up men in harmful ways that made room for the kinds of abuse that takes place on every level of our society. And though monumental shifts did take place during this time, thanks for the pioneering work of women like Tarana Burke and so many others, public thoughts were still varied. Many folks reflected in scorn and just outright frustration about this era, feeling empathy for what to them felt like nefarious forces at play, taking another man down. And again, as frustrating as that perspective is to me when I hear it espoused, because I'm always like genuinely sitting there like, I know you've seen some pretty effed up stuff with men. Both men and women alike have been victims of the ruthlessness of a powerful man with no one in his path to bring him under subjection in any way. That said though, I still kind of get their knee-jerk reaction to reject it, particularly black men. I get our knee-jerk reaction as a community to reject this public display of crucifixion, if you will, or condemnation of black men, because historically our men have been robbed from us in our community because of various reasons, all stemming from white supremacist rule and oppression. And our communities in a lot of ways have been fractured and ruptured because our family structure has been ruptured by no fault of our own, right? All of the poor behaviors that you perhaps see in our communities are reflections of systemic, powerful forces at play being intentional about trying to disrupt and tear down our community. And so when you have someone publicly coming against a black man who has contributed financially or otherwise to our community significantly, the first thing that comes up in our mind immediately is images of Tulsa and Emmett Till, and even in more recent days, Tamir Rice and Trayvon Martin and all of the slain young black children or black men at the hands of police and at the hands of the literal corruption that is white supremacy that permeates the entirety of our culture and our DNA of our country. So I get the pushback, truly, I do. However, we have to be honest about the fact that we've reconciled the flawed sexual and dominating ways of men because we so long to see masculinity in the ways we were told that it would and should present. We make peace with malehood being inclusive of abuse or emotional neglect and domination because we have it in our minds that it's a price that we pay, a price for the toil he experiences just to be male and the things he has to wrestle with because of those pressures.
If he's paying all the bills, then she should take care of the kids, which is wild to me because paying bills does not give you the license to be an absent, present father. What the you mean just because you pay some bills that you don't have to help your son learn how to read? Who the told you, even if you paid all the bills, that you don't have to raise your own kids that's in the house with you? Nigga better make a pack a lunch every now and again.
So, no matter how atrocious the behaviors, so many are willing to look the other way. And I could unpack that a million different ways, but what strikes me most from it is simply this, that everyone wants to be taken care of and to feel protected by this figure. A figure who in many of these infamous cases made the people around them feel seen and cared for in many ways if we look at them carefully. The people around Trump and Diddy, for example, and so many others like them, loved them, and many spoke highly of their charm and and their wit, because it's never all bad, because no human is. We just give some humans social passes for transgressions and others we don't, because we're longing for healthy masculinity. So we'll take it in any form. But back to Trump and this need for daddies that y'all have. A Pew Research study that did an analysis on voters and their various subgroups found that at all age levels, parents are more Republican oriented than non-parents. For example, 55% of men ages 35 to 44 who have children under 18 identify with or lean toward the GOP. This statistic to me lends credibility to the idea that many parents and people are responding to is not lived reality, but symbolic reassurance. Parenthood heightens anxiety around safety and provision, and in that heightened state, people often gravitate towards simplified narratives of strength and leadership. Even when those narratives don't hold up under scrutiny. Most times they don't in this instance. This helps explain a stylized, almost divine version of masculinity and how it remains appealing. It promises certainty without requiring transformation. Rather than grappling with the complexities of real human identity, men who are both strong and vulnerable, or authoritative and accountable, we cling to an imagined figure that absolves us from doing the harder work of formation. As a result, we tolerate poor behavior and incoherence from men because we are invested in preserving this myth, because it's all we have to hold on to. In the same way, political rhetoric about family values that the Republican Party espouses is often embraced despite policies that literally undermine actual family quality of life, because the symbol feels safer than the truth. Many would rather believe a lie that feels stabilizing than confront a reality that demands maturity and sees people through a nuanced lens and holds them responsible for actions. Across many traditions, balance matters. Dad and mom energy is not such that it is to be oppressive, though we've obviously used it in deeply oppressive and harmful ways. That binary isn't designed in a way that it is to be harmful or exclusionary to people. It was designed that way in part to model the beauty in balance, the beautiful power and necessity of community. Two ordinary humans can come together and produce extraordinary miraculousness. That's meaningful. And what both provide to the life of a child is significant. We don't have to lie or overly pedestalize one over the other, scornfully exclude various versions of it, or exaggerate those roles in any way. We can celebrate them for diversity and complexity, and also the ways that they are equally dependent on one another. Dads are needed to complete this balance, but largely due to our unwavering commitment to unrealistic patriarchal depictions of how they should show up, they're often just figments of our imagination, leaving our culture vulnerable to the folly and danger of unmitigated and unregulated testosterone and displays of this dangerous version of manhood that, in many ways, is akin to animalistic behaviors, y'all. I'm sorry to say it, but it's true.
This quote from Bell Hooks, "The will to change," really hit home for me. In the patriarchal culture, all men learn emotional stoicism. It is not an option for men to refuse to participate in the construction of masculinity. The men that portray the patriarchal expectations risk shaming and punishment. Men are not allowed to be vulnerable. Men are not allowed to acknowledge fear. Men are not allowed to cry. And the men that do so are humiliated.
And when decay happens, largely by these very patriarchal systems people call on, the same system that inflicted this harm, then we get to help us steer the ship, Daddy. I feel chaotic. Please bring order back. But it's like, wait, didn't he just cause the same thing to this equation? And like, we tried this a million different ways. Yeah, but his voice is deep, Raven, and he's so funny and down to earth. Strong men figures enter the picture not because they are healthy, but because they appear decisive in a sea of uncertainty. Even if they and all that they represent are the cause of uncertainty, though. But when balanced strength is absent, exaggerated strength rushes in to fill that gap. Donald Trump, as abhorrent as he is, he functions as a symbol more than a solution. He represents certainty without hesitation, a kind of assertion without self-doubt, at least publicly anyway. And in a world overwhelmed by ambiguity, especially like one that we have in American culture where we are so understandably deeply polarized and lured into rage from every corner of our worlds, all while our economic system we've been taught to believe as the holy grail in capitalism is quite literally eating itself and everyone in it. Yeah, in that world, strong man caricatures can feel stabilizing, but I want to remind us of something. Psychological relief is not the same as moral health. Loudness is not leadership, and force is certainly not formation. What's being drawn to here isn't policy, it's cowardly posturing, pretend, cosplay, pick an adjective. But here's my point though. This is a critical point and I'm done because I did not want this video to be long. The answer to this moment is not returning to versions of masculinity rooted in control or domination or emotional suppression even. That road has continuously proven time and time again destructive. But, and this is where I want my fellow bleeding heart liberals to hear me good, neither is the answer pretending that strength, authority, or structure aren't necessary. A healthier version of masculinity looks like strength that serves rather than conquers, authority rooted in accountability, presence that stabilizes rather than intimidates people, protection without a need to possess anything or anybody for that matter, direction in partnership paired with humility. This is not a call for old masculinity. This is an invitation into reformed and refined and redeemed masculinity. Until our society offers compelling models of this kind of strength, people will continue mistaking exaggerated confidence for leadership. So, when we see figures like Nicki signaling openness to strongman energy, it shouldn't alarm us. It should invite reflection, honestly. Not how do we shut this down, but what formation has been missing. The deeper question isn't whether we need masculinity back. I think the deeper question is whether men are willing to reimagine it altogether, to form men who are grounded, responsible, or commit to being grounded, responsible, emotionally present, and morally anchored even. Because when healthy strength is absent, unhealthy strength will always step in and offer itself as a substitute. And history shows us time and time again, this substitute comes at a high cost that none of us are willing to pay. All right, guys. Yeah, talk to y'all later. Like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.